Welcome to the latest episode of Trojans Wired, the podcast, which is an in-house production of the website Trojans Wire. We are part of the College Wire Network. So, it's Memorial Day weekend. USC women's basketball analyst CC Clay back with us. CC's been on vacation, but now that we're back from that vacation, whenever there's a big transfer portal story connected in some way to USC women's basketball, we're going to talk about it. So the big recent story that we're finally able to get to now that vacation's over is Kayleigh Heckel transferring to UConn, landing with Gino and the national champions. So CC, obviously a really juicy story. Like, she's not landing at an obscure program. She's not landing at a mid-major or a lower tier Power Four conference to just load up on minutes. She's going to another championship program. And one thing we always want to say this, not just for Kayleigh Heckel, but for any transfer who leaves USC, we wish her the best, and we don't want to feed into this mentality of, hey, if you're not playing for us, we don't wish you well. We never want to say that or imply that. We hope Kayleigh Heckel succeeds. Now, that said, we can evaluate this move and say, it's a really interesting fit, and there are some obvious questions to bring up with it. So, CC, your reaction to Kayleigh Heckel landing at UConn, of all places?
I said from the beginning that she wanted to be at home or closer to home. She's from New York, and her parents her mom probably wanted her closer to home. Um, I originally thought that she was going to go to Notre Dame, but I think when Notre Dame signed some other guard, she changed her mind and decided that she was going to go to UConn. Why I think this is interesting is because you know this tells me that the only reason why that she's leaving USC is because she wanted to be closer to home. I mean, because in my opinion, she's going to go to UConn and she's going to have to play behind their starting guard. And at USC this year, she probably would have got a lot more minutes. She probably would have been one of the leaders of the team, I would imagine. I don't know, but so it's just an interesting choice to me. I think that when you look at the coaching styles with Lindsay Gottlieb and Gino Auriemma, I'm sorry, those are two entirely different coaching styles. And I don't know, it's going to be really interesting. But I do think that she's going to come off the bench and she's going to not play the minutes that she hoped that she's getting or was going to get at USC. So it's just very interesting to me. I wish her nothing but luck. I think that she'll do well there. I'm just curious as to, it was just an odd choice to me because, I thought she was leaving because she wasn't happy with the minutes that she got, but obviously that can't be it.
Yeah, I think that's really the heart of the discussion, that if she wanted more minutes, this is not the program you would go to if you wanted to get more minutes. And of course, the other obvious thing we have to point out, just, I mean, like, we all know this, but let's just, put it out on the table just to be absolutely clear about it. Juju Watkins is not going to be playing the first few months of the season. Probably it's going to be we hope it's going to be on a timetable for a mid-season return from the injury she suffered in March. And just in terms of how a recovery timetable normally goes. So, Kayleigh Heckel was in a position to get a lot of minutes, certainly in November, certainly in the first few weeks of the season. So yes, if this was about minutes, UConn would not be the landing spot. So, in terms of what we've been talking about with regards to Kayleigh Heckel and what she needed to work on, we know she's not tall, she doesn't have a lot of length. The size was something that opponents win at last season, and you talked about the need to develop a more of a dribble drive game. Can she get to the basket, and can she make herself more than just a perimeter shooter, adding tools to her offensive game? So in Gino's system and on that UConn roster, how do you think those bullet points in terms of where Kayleigh Heckel needs to improve, do you think she has a decent chance of being able to develop those weaknesses into strengths within the context of that UConn lineup?
She's going to have to. I think what Kaylee Heckel is thinking, and maybe what Gino is thinking, is that she's going to come in and fill the role that Caitlin Chin made. except she won't be starting, or she'll push KK Arnold for that starting role. But that role is going to go to KK Arnold. There's no way that KK Arnold is going to give up a starting position, and I think that KK Arnold alongside AZ Fudd is going to be a good duo. Now, if you substitute AZ Fudd out and put Kayleigh Heckel in for KK Arnold, those two guards together is going to be really, I think, in my opinion, going to be fun to watch because they're both fast. Where Kayleigh needs to develop again is her left-handed layups. She doesn't know how to shoot a left-handed layup. In every game that I watched her at SC, on the left side, she would shoot that underhand right-handed layup on the left side, which a lot of times would get blocked or she would miss it because she's not confident with taking that shot in her left hand. Also, she needs to be a little bit more under control, and especially in Gino's system because that's more of a controlled system. It's not as free as the USC offense was. So she doesn't quite have to learn how to read and react like she did within a USC offense because within Gino's system, it's systematic, right? You have different positions and different spots where you have to go and where you have to fill. Now they like to run too. They like to get out on transition, so that's going to be interesting to watch. But it's going to be interesting to me to see if she does back up KK Arnold. Is she going to come in and KK Arnold wasn't a ball dominant guard. KK Arnold liked to pass the ball off. Right now, she would drive when she needed to, but she wasn't a drive first guard. She was a pass first guard. Kayleigh Heckel's the opposite. Kayleigh Heckel is a scoring guard. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two play off one another and how Kayleigh Heckel adjust her gameplay if she's going to back up KK Arnold when you have AZ Fudd, Sarah Strong. I mean, they got a squad. So again, they're not going to need Kayleigh Heckel to score. How is Kayleigh going to deal with that?
One question I have, Cece, is, is Gino going to expect Kayleigh Heckel to provide, a relatively equal level of production at both ends of the floor? Or do you think that she's going to be part of like maybe Gino's going to have an offense first rotation and a defense first rotation, and Kayleigh might fit into more of a defense first look for UConn, more situational substitutions? I mean, how much is Kayleigh Heckel, in your estimation, going to be able to get this done at both ends for UConn, or how much is she going to be just dependent on for her defense on the
Well,
perimeter for Gino?
I mean, I depending on for her defense. I mean, it took her a while to understand how to play defense when she was at SC. I mean, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or mean. I mean, Kayleigh Heckel, when she
Yeah.
first came in, she didn't even know how to slide her feet correctly on the defensive side of the ball. So I think in Gino's system, Gino is very strict, when it comes to his system. So she's got to be ready to come in and play the role that's given to her, whether it's on the defensive side or offensive side or both. Because if you're not going to play defense, you're going to be on the bench, if you're playing for Gino. And if you're not going to do what your role is on offense, then you're going to be on the bench. So if Gino's explained to her, hey, your role is to come in, speed up the offense, get us out in transition, pass first to AZ or to Sarah Strong, you got to do that. If your role is to come in, shoot some threes, if you're open, or drive to the bucket, you got to do that. If your role is, I don't want you to shoot at all, I want you to go in and I want you to be a mad dog on defense, you got to do that. So I'm anxious to see how she adjusts to that type of head coaching. Whereas at SC, she had some leeway and some opportunity to do what she wanted to do on offense. She just kind of didn't do it at times.
So here's an interesting little comparison, CC. Kiki Iriafen goes from Tara's very structured Stanford system to Lindsay Gottlieb's pro style system at USC. So in many ways, it seems as that Kayleigh Heckel's making the reverse change, going from a Lindsay Gottlieb uh, process, philosophy, framework to Gino. So, Kiki went through struggles in her adjustment, but it really benefited her, as we can see, for the pro game. Uh, do you have a sense of if you go from more structure to not that Lindsay Gottlieb's isn't structured, but just like Lindsay Gottlieb does promote freedom, right? Allowing her players to make mistakes, but learn from them, as kind of part of her teaching philosophy. If you go from comparatively more structure to less, compared to going from comparatively less structure to more, do you have a sense of how that usually goes? Like, do you usually see results line up on one side of that equation, or is it just all about the player and the coach and the roster just making it work in that given situation? How do you evaluate Kayleigh Heckel in light of that kind of construct?
I think that's a great question. And here's what I will say to that. And this is just my opinion. When you have a player that's been in college for 3 years, that's been in a structured system under Tara Vanderveer, that, it's a system structured and you're like a robot. You become like a robot. You know exactly where you have to go, what you have to do, and that's all the system is. And then you go to a system that's free flowing, that you have more freedom, but you have to have basketball IQ to understand what the players are doing on the floor. You have to understand how to read defense. You have to understand how to read offense. You have to understand when to roll, how to roll. It can be hard, right? Because now all of a sudden you have to learn so much more than going from spot A to spot B. You have to understand the defense more so than you did in your prior years at Stanford. Now, when she was at Stanford, of course she had to understand defenses, but the system helped her through that. And when she transferred to USC, she has to learn through um, help from her players along with studying film, right? That's how you get better in a pro style offense. You have to study film. Now, in my opinion, if you're a freshman coming into a system like that, like a Stanford system, it's easier for you because again, you're being taught to go from point A to point B. You're not really understand. You don't really have to understand the defensive shifts and all this kind of stuff, right? Now, to go from a free flowing system such as Lindsey Gottlieb's system to a UConn system that's back to structure, I think, in my opinion, is going to be helpful to Kayleigh because she had a year under her belt to really understand how defensive works, how to better her IQ, her basketball IQ. So now when she goes into a structured system, she's still going to be able to read what defensive players do, what players should go, what actions she should be taking within that offensive structure. So I think it's going to benefit her more than coming from a structured system than going to a free flow system.
One other portal story. Well, that's Kayleigh Heckel, but one other portal story of note is UCLA. I mean, this happened a while ago, but now it's official that Gianna Neepkins from Utah is joining the Bruins, and so London Jones is now, of course, at USC, and you Barker left. So you have some really interesting trade-offs in terms of the pieces going out at UCLA and the pieces coming in, Neepkins being one of them. How do you see this reconfigured USC roster with Neepkins now part of the mix?
Well, I still don't think they should be ranked number four. I mean, in the preseason rankings, that still just gets me. But here's what I will say: Neepkins is bigger than London Jones. She's not faster. She can drive, but her main thing is catch and three shoot. Whereas London Jones can shoot off the dribble. She can drive and kick, and so on and so forth. It's going to be interesting. They have Charlize Ledger Walker coming back as well too, so they're going to have a chemistry thing that they need to build again. Now, Charlize Ledger Walker has probably been playing with them and understands the flow of the offense, so I don't think that the chemistry is gonna hurt them so much as Gianna Neekins coming in from a Utah system that's all about shooting threes and twos only. So how is she gonna adjust? Is she gonna be able to take a mid-range shot? It's just two entirely total different offenses. Whereas London Jones can shoot the mid range, she can shoot the three. She's fast. She can play defense. So it's going to be interesting to see. Does Gianna Neekins help them shooting wise? They lost Dort. What they lost one other player too. That was a 3-point shooter that was really tall, and I saw her as a replacement for her. I still think that they have some holes in their offense, and it's going to be interesting to see, how the sisters play off one another, if that's really going to work, and the growing pains that's going to have as well.
Yeah, I think Sienna Betts, if she can make an instant impact, I can see it all coming together for UCLA. But like she's just a freshman and it might not all come together. And of course, if Lauren Betts is fearful of the lava, we got to see how Sienna Betts deals with floor spacing, defensive responsibilities. And if the two of them are going to share the court at the same time, Sienna Betts will have to be more of a wide-ranging defender who can take on different positional assignments at different spots on the floor. So, like I see upside for UCLA if Sienna Betts is able to be an instant impact player, but I think it's highly questionable in terms of whether she will be. Like we need to actually see her on the court before we really get a solidified sense of how good UCLA can be. So I think there's upside, but I do think there are some significant uncertainties, and most of them run through Sienna Betts at
I,
UCLA.
I I'm interested to see how Charlize Ledger Walker and Kiki Rice, what that dynamic is going to be, because Kiki's used to playing the point guard. Charlize plays the point guard. So how is that? Are they going to have just a positionless offense with two point guards? Or how's that going to work? And then who's going to be the backup point guard? Who do they have on their bench that's going to come in and fill the holes that they lost with Barker and London Jones when London Jones left and she didn't start. Sienna Betts and Lauren Betts, you got 6'4" and 6'7", and I think that Corey Close is going to be relying on those two to help win them games next year. And that's a lot, 6'4" and 6'7". But we had, Rhea Marshall, we had, 6'5" and 6'3", 6'3" and a half with Kiki and Rhea. So it's going to be really interesting to see, what our counter moves are going to be to UCLA's counter moves, and I'm really interested to see how UCLA's, everybody's looking at UCLA like, oh, they're going to be really good because of the Betts sisters and because of Neepkins, but I'm just I want to see how that's gonna flow together and who they have coming off their bench. How's that gonna work? So yeah, some interesting off-season moves, and we'll see. Like I said, she's a catch and three shooter, and she's coming from an offense. We're talking about Neekins, and she comes from an offense at Utah where Lynn Roberts was strict about threes and twos only. So how is she going to be able to adjust to a new offense that's not threes and twos only? She's been playing in that offense for 3 years, so that's going to be a big switch for her as well.
Anything else from the transfer portal? I mean, it's been relatively quiet, but like there's still a number of players out there. Like this hasn't fully run its course, but should anyone be surprised by how relatively quiet it's been? Because I really haven't heard a whole lot of news or seen a whole lot of news over the past few weeks.
You see some of the transfer portal moves going on back and forth, but because they're not big names, they're not really talked about as much. I do still think USC is going to bring another big on the team, and they're looking for a big that is willing to fit the role of not being the first position player. They need a big that's going to be like a Clarice, that's going to come in and be that secondary role that can go on the floor and do what Clarice did when your name's called. Go get it, go get the job done. So I still think that they're taking their time with that because they want to make sure that that's an important piece that they need to bring on this team. And so I think that they just want to make sure that they bring the right player in that's going to fulfill that Clarice role and do the same amount of damage that Clarice did when Clarice entered the game.
All right, so Kayleigh Heckel to UConn. That's just a fascinating plot twist. I don't know how many of us expected it. I know I didn't, because I was certainly of the thought process that okay, Kayleigh Heckel's going to go where she can be the lead and play 30 minutes a night. That is not going to happen at UConn. But hey, she's joining the national champions, and if she plays 15 minutes for a national championship team and gets a basketball education from Gino, like that could certainly set her up well for the WNBA and give her a college career she will relish. And so we want to say we wish Kayleigh Heckel well at UConn. And you know what? Best case scenario, USC versus UConn in Phoenix, 2026 Final Four, either a national semifinal or a national title game. Wouldn't that be
Well,
quite
they
a
play
fun?
UConn. They play UConn preseason again at Galen Center this year. So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah. So they got UConn, they have South Carolina, and they have Notre Dame. Three big games, without Juju. So that's going to be fun to watch. And I'm I'm really interested to see how those games play out. But I will tell you about Kayleigh Heckel. I'm happy for her. And sometimes players do better under a real structured system. And again, not to say that Lindsay's system isn't structured because it
Yeah,
is structured
yeah.
in Lindsay Gottlieb's way, right? It's just more of a pro style where you have to think on your feet a little bit more. Some players don't do well with that, and I think Kayleigh Heckel coming out of high school really struggled with fitting into that type of offense and really understanding, where the holes were on the floor and where she could fit in. And at UConn, she's going to a school to play for a coach that's legendary, and he's structured, and maybe that system will benefit Kayleigh Heckel a lot better, and we'll see some development in her that we didn't see at USC. So I wish her the best of luck. I'm curious to see how that plays out, but everything happens for a reason. She's closer to home. Her family will be able to see her. And nowadays, I think that's another decision that players are making. They're leaning towards staying close to home, and if they can get an NIL deal that brings them closer to home, that's the move that they're going to make.
And so that is certainly a very important reason for Kaylee Heckel, and obviously for a lot of other players who make decisions along similar lines. So once again, we wish the very best for Kaylee Heckel. All right, so Cece, tell us what else you have going on at your YouTube channel, your USC Women's Basketball YouTube channel, and also your Substack.
Yeah, so I do have a couple Substacks coming out this week. The WNBA versus the NBA, and why the WNBA is now trending more than the NBA is, in my opinion. I do have that story coming out, and I have a couple more coming out this week that I'll let you be surprised about. And my YouTube, I have my Dream Team video that I'm working on, as well as I'm going to do a Jazzy Davidson, I think, film breakdown, so everybody that hasn't have an opportunity to watch Jazzy Davidson, you can see some film breakdown. I do want to mention also that Overtime Select is their big weekend is coming up June 6th, and Juju Watkins is one of the coaches. So make sure you guys tune into that. It's June 6th. I don't have the time yet, but it's on YouTube, and I know everybody is anxiously waiting to see Juju, and to see her there out in public coaching a team is going to be really fun to watch. So make sure you guys check that out.
Coach Juju, just it's a different thing to say, but yeah, that's certainly going to draw a lot of interest. So yeah, stay on CC's USC Women's Basketball channel at YouTube. Be sure to like her videos, subscribe to the channel, share the videos, and get that notification reminder so that every new CC Clay YouTube post, you can get that little reminder so that you know something new is in your inbox for you to watch. All right, so
Hey
for
Matt,
some, yeah.
real quick. These podcasts are streaming on audio stream audio streams as well. So whatever you like to do, if you like to listen, you can listen on Apple, Spotify, iHeart. It's on every audio stream that you can imagine. And then if you're a visual person and you want to watch on YouTube, well, here we are.
Wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. All right. So for CC Clay, this is Matt Zemek. Thanks for listening to another episode of Trojans Wired. We'll see you next time.
Fight on.